ready for takeoff on some amazing adventures, but feeling a little grounded by flight anxiety?
Yeah.
We hear you, and we've got a deep dive today packed with expert advice to help you find calmer skies.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to unpack some seriously cool, science-backed strategies to tackle that fear of flying. And it's not just about positive vibes, it's about understanding your body's own systems and working with them.
What's fascinating here is that while counseling can be helpful for understanding the root causes of your flight anxiety, we're actually going to focus on techniques you can use to regulate your body's response to stress and anxiety.
Okay.
It's like having a secret weapon for your nervous system.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
First, let's acknowledge that flight anxiety is something a lot of people are dealing with.
Right.
Especially lately, given the news, it's totally understandable.
Absolutely. In 2022 alone, 25 million adults in the U.S. reported some level of fear of flying. And we know that searches about flight anxiety spiked online after those tragic crashes in early 2025. Yeah.
It's like our collective anxiety went into overdrive. But it's important to remember that statistically, air travel is still one of the safest ways to travel.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Our fears don't always reflect actual risk.
Right.
What's interesting is that flight anxiety isn't just a mental thing. There's a powerful physical and chemical component at play, too.
So it's not just me being weird or anything.
Not at all.
Tell me more about that.
Our bodies have this amazing system for dealing with stress called the sympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
It's what triggers that fight or flight response.
Oh, yeah, that heart-racing, palms sweating feeling like you want to jump out of your skin.
Exactly. But here's the catch. In our modern, always-on world, that system is often stuck in overdrive. We're constantly bombarded with information, deadlines, pressure. Our bodies are primed for anxiety, even when we're trying to relax.
So it's like we're fighting an uphill battle against our own biology.
In a way, yes. That's why just telling yourself to calm down often doesn't work. We need to address what's happening at a deeper level.
This is where it gets really interesting. One of the sources we dug into had this surprising tip about using cold temperatures to actually hack our nervous system.
Huh?
I was like, wait, what?
It sounds counterintuitive, but cold temperatures can actually help. Here's why cold slows down the metabolic activity that contributes to that anxious feeling.
Okay.
Think about it when you're stressed. You often feel hot and flushed. Cooling down can signal to your body that things are actually okay.
So it's like hitting the reset button on our internal thermostat.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that on, say, a plane?
There are simple techniques you can try. Even just holding a cold can of soda against your forehead can make a difference. It's like a mini ice pack for your anxiety.
Okay, that's actually doable. Now, let's talk about breathing. I know this is something most people have heard of for anxiety relief.
Right.
But is it really that powerful?
It's more than just taking a few deep breaths. It's about consciously slowing down your breathing when you do,
Right.
that you directly impact your heart rate and body temperature, and those changes send signals to your brain that it's safe to chill out.
So we're not just masking the anxiety, we're actually changing how our body is responding to it.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. This reminds me of the whole concept of grounding. I've heard that term thrown around, but what exactly does it mean, and how does it tie into all of this?
Grounding is all about bringing your awareness to the present moment. When we're anxious, our minds often race into the future, catastrophizing and imagining the worst, but focusing on your breath. That physical sensation forces you to pay attention to what's happening right now in your body.
So it's like an anchor pulling us back from that spiral of what ifs.
Exactly. And the beauty of breathing techniques is that you can practice them anywhere, anytime, even during takeoff and landing.
Okay. I'm adding, but pack a cold drink and practice my breathing to my pre-flight checklist.
Good idea.
Another thing that came up in our research is using our senses to manage anxiety distraction can be helpful, but our sources pointed out that it's not always that straightforward.
Right. It's not as simple as just putting on a movie and tuning out. When you're in a state of high anxiety, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, gets overpowered by the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center.
So it's like our logical brain gets hijacked by our fear response. Yikes.
Pretty much that's why trying to read or watch something might not be effective when you're already super anxious. But here's the cool thing. Your brain can always process sensory input even when you're stressed.
Interesting. So we can use our senses to create a calming experience rather than trying to force our brains to think differently.
That's the idea. Our sources had some creative specific tips for this. Things like playing I Spy games to engage your sense of sight packing, sour candies to stimulate your taste buds, or using the 5-4-3-2-1 technique.
Oh, I've heard of that one. You focus on 5 things. You can see 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste clever.
It's a great way to redirect your attention and ground yourself in your surroundings.
And those pleasant sensations, the sour candy, the soft blanket, they actually release calming chemicals in your brain, too.
That's right.
So it's a double whammy. You're distracting yourself from anxious thoughts and giving your system a dose of feel-good chemicals.
It's like a spa day for your nervous system.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, there's one more sensory experience we should talk about: touch.
Touch. Now, this might seem unexpected, especially if you're a solo traveler.
It might, but it's incredibly powerful. Touch releases oxytocin, sometimes called the cuddle hormone, because it's released during bonding experiences. And oxytocin has been shown to significantly reduce stress.
So even a simple touch can have a big impact on our anxiety levels. What if you don't have a travel buddy to give you a hand massage?
Weighted blankets are a great option for solo travelers.
Mm.
They provide that gentle, calming pressure that can be really soothing.
Okay, I'm seeing a theme here. It's all about working with our bodies, not against them.
Exactly. And speaking of working with our bodies, let's talk about that feeling of losing control, which is a huge source of anxiety for many flyers.
Being strapped into this metal tube hurtling through the air at hundreds of miles an hour, I get it. It's no wonder people feel anxious.
That lack of control is a theme that resonates with a lot of people, even outside of flying. We all struggle with wanting to control things in our lives, but when it comes to flying, the stakes feel higher.
Right. Absolutely. So how do we deal with that? Is it even possible to feel in control when you're literally surrendering control to a pilot and a plane?
It's a great question, and one that therapy can help with. There are specific tools and techniques therapists use to help people cope with that feeling of losing control.
So we can learn to manage that fear rather than letting it completely take over.
Exactly. One concept that comes up a lot in therapy is radical acceptance. It's about accepting what we can't change and focusing on what we can control.
That's a powerful idea. It's almost countercultural, right?
Yeah.
We're constantly told we should be able to achieve anything if we just try hard enough, but sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is surrender.
Surrender to what we can't change. Yes, it can be incredibly freeing. One of the sources mentioned a psychologist who reminds herself that her worried brain isn't a very good statistician. Just because we fear something doesn't mean it's likely to happen.
That's a great reminder. But how do we actually put this into practice?
It's about developing coping mechanisms and mantras before you even get on the plane. It's like building mental muscle memory for calmness.
So practice makes perfect, even when it comes to managing anxiety.
Absolutely. Think of it like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just show up on race day and expect to run 26 miles without any preparation. The same goes for managing anxiety. You need to build up your mental resilience and coping skills over time.
That's a great analogy. Now, while all these tips are incredibly helpful, it's important to acknowledge that they might not be a replacement for therapy for those who are struggling with severe anxiety.
Definitely. Therapy provides personalized support and guidance, helping you uncover deeper reasons for your fear of flying and develop strategies tailored to your specific needs.
So it's like having a personal coach in your corner, helping you navigate those turbulent emotional waters.
Exactly. And therapy can equip you with tools to address other areas of your life where anxiety might be holding you back.
So it's about empowering yourself to live a fuller, richer life, free from the constraints of fear.
Precisely. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's no shame in seeking support from a professional.
In fact, it's a sign of strength and self-awareness. It shows that you're committed to taking care of your mental health.
Absolutely. There are so many incredible therapists out there who are passionate about helping people overcome their fears and live their best lives. So if you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already. We've explored the science behind anxiety. We've learned about the amazing power of our own bodies to regulate stress. And we've unpacked some incredibly helpful techniques for managing flight anxiety. But before we wrap up part 1 of this deep dive, I have a question for you.
I'm all ears.
We've talked about calming the mind, but what about the body? Our sources had some fascinating insights about using touch to manage anxiety, and I think our listeners would love to hear more about that.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great place to pick up next time.
Sounds good.
Touch is so powerful and often overlooked when it comes to managing anxiety. We're wired for connection, and physical touch is one of the most fundamental ways we experience that.
It's true. Think about a hug from a loved one when you're feeling down. It's like instant comfort. But how does that translate to something like flight anxiety?
Well, research has shown that touch, even gentle pressure, can trigger the release of oxytocin in our brains.
Where oxytocin, isn't that the love hormone?
It is. It's often associated with bonding and social connection,
Okay.
but it also plays a crucial role in regulating our stress response when we experience touch. Our brains release oxytocin, which helps to calm our nervous system and reduce feelings of anxiety.
So in a way, touch is like sending a signal to our brains that we're safe and connected, even in situations that might feel scary. That's fascinating.
Exactly. And the beauty of this is that we can actually use this knowledge to our advantage. We've already talked about weighted blankets, which can provide that calming pressure for solo travelers.
Right. But what about other ways to incorporate touch into our anxiety-busting toolkit, especially when we're actually on the plane?
There are a few simple things you can try. One is self-massage. Even just gently rubbing your palms together or massaging your temples can be surprisingly effective.
It's like giving yourself a mini spa treatment at 30,000 feet. Love it. What about if you're traveling with someone?
If you're comfortable with it, ask your travel companion if they'd be willing to give you a hand or shoulder massage. Even a few minutes of gentle touch can make a big difference.
That's a great tip, and I imagine it could also be a nice way to connect and de-stress together before the flight even takes off.
Yeah.
Speaking of pre-flight rituals, let's circle back to some of the other techniques we discussed earlier. Are there any that are particularly helpful for those moments when you're actually on the plane and feeling those pre-flight jitters?
Absolutely. Remember the cold can trick we mentioned earlier. Having a cold drink on hand during takeoff can be incredibly helpful. That sensation of cold can help to ground you in the present moment and interrupt that anxious thought spiral.
It's like hitting the pause button on your anxiety.
What about breathing techniques?
They're even more important when you're actually in the air. Slow, controlled breaths are like sending a direct message to your brain that everything is okay. It can help to regulate your heart rate and bring a sense of calm.
So it's not just about distracting ourselves from the fear. It's about actively shifting our physiological response to it that's empowering. What about those sensory techniques we discussed? Any in-flight applications for those?
Absolutely. Having a playlist of calming music or a small fidget toy can be incredibly helpful. Engaging your senses can help to ground you in the present moment and distract you from those anxious thoughts.
It's all about creating a sense of calm amidst the chaos of air travel. And remember, you're not alone in this encounter. Flight attendants are trained to help passengers who are feeling anxious. Don't hesitate to let them know if you need assistance. They've seen it all, and they're there to help. They can often provide reassurance and support that can make a big difference in how you feel.
It's like having a calming presence right there with you, guiding you through the experience.
Exactly. And sometimes just knowing that someone is there for you can make all the difference in the world. It reminds us that even in those moments when we feel most alone, we're surrounded by people who care. As we were researching this episode, it struck me how much anxiety we all carry around, not just about flying, but about life in general.
It's true. It's like we're constantly on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop. But what if we could learn to approach life with a little more ease, a little more grace? What if we could find ways to quiet those anxious voices in our heads and embrace the present moment?
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? To find that sense of peace and tranquility amidst the chaos of everyday life. And the techniques we've been discussing, they're not just for flying. They're life skills.
So we're not just talking about conquering our fear of flying. We're talking about conquering our fear itself, learning to trust ourselves, and our ability to navigate life's challenges.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, but with each step we take, we're moving closer to a place of greater peace and freedom.
All right, we're making our final descent in this deep dive into conquering flight anxiety. We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding the science behind anxiety to practical tips for hacking our nervous systems.
We've explored how our bodies react to stress, the power of breathwork and sensory techniques, and even how touch can play a surprising role in managing anxiety.
And of course, we talked about how therapy can be a game changer for those looking for personalized support and guidance. But as we wrap up, what's the key takeaway here? What do we really want our listeners to remember?
What's fascinating to me is that the goal isn't necessarily to eliminate fear entirely. It's about learning to manage it so you can still enjoy the amazing experience of travel.
That makes sense. It's like we're not trying to become fearless robots. We're
Right.
just trying to find a way to coexist with our anxiety and not let it control our lives.
Exactly. It's a process. It takes time and practice, but the rewards are huge. Imagine being able to hop on a plane and actually enjoy the flight, to look out the window and marvel at the world from above, to explore new destinations without being held back by fear.
Okay, now I'm getting excited. That sense of freedom and possibility, that's what travel is all about. As we were putting this episode together, I realized that conquering flight anxiety is about so much more than just getting on a plane.
I'm curious, what do you mean?
It's about conquering those limiting beliefs that hold us back in all areas of our lives. It's
Yeah.
about realizing that we are capable of so much more than we think, we are pushing past our comfort zones and embracing the unknown.
That's such an important point. It's about trusting ourselves, trusting our resilience, and trusting that we have the inner strength to navigate whatever challenges come our way.
And sometimes the biggest challenge is simply getting out of our own way, right?
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
it's like we're not just passengers on a plane, we're pilots of our own lives.
Yeah.
We have the power to choose our course, to navigate through turbulence, and to soar to new heights.
So as you pack your carry-on for your next trip, remember this. You've got a whole toolkit to help you feel more in control during your flight. You've got science on your side, practical techniques to try, and most importantly, you've got the power within you to face your fears and embrace the adventure that awaits.
And remember, you are not alone in this journey. There are so many resources available to support you, from therapists to online communities to fellow travelers who have faced similar challenges. Reach out, connect, and share your experiences. It can make all the difference.
The world is waiting to be explored, and you deserve to experience all the beauty, wonder, and connection that travel has to offer. Safe travels, everyone.